Hello, YouTubers out there. This is Jerry Saravia at the movies. I want to mention I left out a film from 1986 that I did see in theaters in my 1986 films that I saw in theaters video, The Fly, with Jeff Goldblum. So that was a great movie. I recently reviewed it, and yeah, just one of my favorite horror pictures, particularly by David Cronenberg. He can do it better than anybody. All right, so let's move along to 1987, which was quite a year. So here we go. These were sort of just put in randomly, although it looks like they're alphabetical, but by descending order, from Z to A. So anyway, doesn't matter. Witches of Eastwick: Jack Nicholson, Cher, Susan Sarandon, Michelle Pfeiffer, and also I might mention Veronica Cartwright, who doesn't get enough recognition. This was a devilish comedy, to say the least. Jack Nicholson is the devil himself, and he lures these three women in a small town in Eastwick. Yeah, there's also a scene involving vomiting cherries, courtesy of Veronica Cartwright. And yeah, that's probably the one scene that's the hardest to really enjoy. It's just a little too much. There's a lot of that in the movie. But overall, very well done film, very well acted by all three female leads especially. And of course you have Jack Nicholson as the devil. And there are a couple of special effects towards the end, and it's directed by George Miller, who did The Road Warrior and Mad Max. So, interesting choice. Yeah, I love that movie. I've seen it at least 2 or 3 times, and it's an exciting, profane, funny movie. So glad I saw that in theaters. The Untouchables, that was a big deal. I think that came out in early summer. Of course, it established Kevin Costner as a leading man. Prior to this film, he was in Silverado and a couple of other films, but this was the film that really put him on the map. And of course, it's got Sean Connery, Charles Martin Smith, and Andy Garcia. Sean Connery won Best Supporting Actor Oscar for the film, which was the following year, of course. And Robert De Niro's Al Capone. It's a very exciting, very entertaining gangster picture, directed by Brian De Palma. I wouldn't call it really a great film, but it's very good. I think it's a little shallow, parts of it, but could have used more character exposition for some of the characters. But Sean Connery is the richest character in the whole film. So yes, terrific movie. Summer School is one of those movies that starred Mark Harmon, and judging by the poster, there's a dog with sunglasses. And I've seen it, and I don't remember much about it. It's directed by Carl Reiner, of all people. Kirstie Alley is also in it. I do remember it's about these kids who are attending a summer school class taught by Mark Harmon. So it's that type of movie, and there's an accident involving a driving school thing, and I don't know. And there's something involving Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think they showed the movie to a class. So yeah, it's one of those type of films. It's something you see in the summer and then you kind of forget about. Stakeout is a pretty good film, a very uneven movie, but pretty good, with Richard Dreyfuss and Emilio Estevez. And it's a cop picture. There are 2 cops on a stakeout. Yeah. And Aidan Quinn plays the villain in it. The violence is a little too much, I think, for that type of picture, but overall it was a pretty good movie. There are very funny bits, but the violent parts are very violent. So I think I prefer overall the sequel that came out in 1993, I think, called Another Stakeout. So, but that's just my preference. Spaceballs is Mel Brooks' take on, his parody rather, on Star Wars. And it is not a complete success, but there are some funny gags in it. It's probably the last decent Mel Brooks movie that Mel Brooks made outside of Life Sucks, which was a film he did in 1991. In as far as parodies, it's the last decent one he did. And, there are a lot of good jokes in it. There are a lot of great visual gags. It overall is not really the funniest film that he made, but I'll take it over History of the World Part 1. But that's just my preference. Some Kind of Wonderful, John Hughes production, directed, I believe, by Howard Deutsch. Anyway, it's look at the poster. It's basically a reprise of Pretty in Pink. And except this time, Eric Stoltz is in the Molly Ringwald role. I don't love Eric Stoltz. I don't really love this movie. I saw it because it was John Hughes and I was interested. And Leah Thompson, I sort of like in the picture. And of course, Mary Stuart Masterson. And I like the depiction of the working class and that sort of thing against the rich kids. But again, we've seen this tale so many times before. Pretty in Pink is just a better movie. But overall, there are some honest scenes in it, and I like it. And Elias Koteas, I believe is how you pronounce it, plays this guy who he's part of a gang, and they go to detention a lot at the high school. Yeah, it's that type of movie. All right. The Secret of My Success. Now, this is a movie that at the time I thought it was funny. I still think it's a funny picture overall. But there are issues with this film, in particular because it suggests that climbing to the top is what you need to do, and you have to defy everyone and get there, the corporate ladder, as you will. So, but it also includes the character of Michael J. Fox unknowingly sleeping with his own aunt. So there are things like that in this film that when you see it later on, again, it kind of sticks out. And also his hairstyle changes in a couple of scenes. It was fine. It was a box office success. It's some of it doesn't quite work, but there are some pretty good gags in the movie. So overall, it was pretty funny. He has to keep his identity hidden because I think his uncle works for this particular corporation in stocks and all that stuff. So it's a Wall Street type story, but the guy gets away with it. It's a little different. That is to say, Michael J. Fox gets away with it. So, all right, let's move along with Eddie Murphy Raw. Now, this came out in December of 1987, and it's the first real concert movie I think I ever saw in theaters, to the best of my recollection. And I enjoy it. Overall, most of it is pretty funny. It's not nearly as good as Delirious. I was an Eddie Murphy fan. I still am to some degree. I haven't seen a lot of his family comedies from the 2000 decade. But overall, if you like Eddie Murphy and you like his stand-up, it's worth seeing. But it's not him at his very best. And a lot of the jokes that he tells in there are funny, particularly involving flatulence and things of that nature, and women wanting half and blah, blah, blah. But some other gags probably wouldn't work well today. So it's hard to say this film would age well. On the other hand, this is a very politically correct, woke culture now. So I don't know. This may be the reason why Eddie Murphy has not returned to stand-up yet. It's because of the way things are. All right. Anyway, The Princess Bride is a very enjoyable film with Peter Falk as his grandfather is telling his kid story of The Princess Bride. And so we see the film play out the story, and it's got Andre the Giant. You can't really go wrong. It's got Billy Crystal, and the two leads are not the most stirring, Robin Wright Penn being one of them, but overall I enjoy Princess Bride. It's a good family picture, so we'll leave it at that. Predator is one of the least enjoyable Schwarzenegger pictures I ever saw. I don't know what it is. There are people that are definitely fans of it. I am not one of them. I like the premise of a alien, that kind of has a ability to sort of merge with the, like a chameleon, merge with the his surroundings, so you can't see him or her or whatever it is, this alien. But overall, I thought it was a bit mediocre to me for a Schwarzenegger picture. And this alien also has a laser weapon. I mean, he can basically vaporize the entire jungle where all these soldiers are. But when it comes to facing Schwarzenegger, they do a mano a mano. I mean, like that makes any sense. So anyway, all right. The Pickup Artist is not a good picture. It's a terrible film. Directed by James Toback. It's got Robert Downey Jr., Molly Ringwald. Dennis Hopper plays Molly Ringwald's alcoholic father. There's a mob element in the movie. It doesn't really mesh with the romantic comedy aspect. It should have worked a hell of a lot better considering the cast, but it just didn't. And this was during my Molly Ringwald phase. And after that, I sort of fell out of favor with Molly Ringwald after that movie. Although For Keeps, that came out the following year, was much better. But anyway. All right, No Way Out. once again establishing Kevin Costner as a true movie star. And this is a great film, directed by Roger Donaldson, starring Costner, Sean Young, and Gene Hackman. Just terrific movie from start to finish. It's a thriller. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. You'll be biting your lip throughout. It's a remake of a Ray Milland picture called The Big Clock, but this is an infinitely better film. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. Definitely worth seeing. I've seen it quite a few times since. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. This was the best Elm Street sequel at the time. It almost goes hand in hand with Part 4, The Dream Master, which came out the following year. Of course, it's about Freddy Krueger, and this time he goes after some patients at a mental institution. Lawrence Fishburne is also in this picture, and it brings back Heather Langenkamp, who was in the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie. It's original, inventive, some of it's a little scary, and always thrilling. Just a fun picture to watch, I think. And it's really the first time we get to see Amanda Krueger, Freddy Krueger's mother. So, yes, this was actually the film that my friend Steven chose to see instead of Evil Dead 2. And Evil Dead 2 at the time was not, nobody under the age of 17 was permitted to go see it. So we teenagers couldn't get in to see Evil Dead 2, but we were able to see Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And by all accounts, I think Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is actually a gorier picture than Evil Dead 2 by comparison. Anyway, all right. Moonstruck is one of the great comedies of all time. I love Moonstruck. I think I only saw it once in theaters. I probably should have seen it twice. Cher, of course, is in it. John Mahoney, Olympia Dukakis. It's just a great film. Nicolas Cage, of Italian-American family. It's well done. It's always witty. Every scene is perfect. Every scene is memorable. It's just an amazing comedy. Comedy drama, romantic comedy, I guess you could almost call it that. But it's got that flavor of that type of family and the morals they hold on to and how some of them are being broken. In particular with Vincent Gardini, I believe it was, who plays Olympia Dukakis' husband, and also they're the parents, Cher's parents in the movie. Danny Aiello is also in it. Yeah, terrific movie. All right, Mannequin is not a terrific movie. It is crap. It is so bad. I just can't even believe I saw it. Andrew McCarthy is in it, and what's her name from... It's not coming to mind now. I think maybe because I want to forget she was ever in it, but from Sex and the City. Anyway, there was a sequel to this movie that I never saw. This was a film I had to actually review for my student school newspaper. So, yeah, it was either Golden Child or Mannequin. And I saw Golden Child, but the other top reviewer decided he was going to review Golden Child, so I had to review Mannequin. Yeah, there you go. All right. I have nothing good to say about that movie. The Lost Boys is one of my favorite teenage vampire movies, I guess is one way to put it. It's got Jason Patric, Kiefer Sutherland. Oh, goodness. Well, there are a bunch of people in this movie, not to mention Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, Alex Winter. And Joel Schumacher directed, and I think he did a great job. It's both sensational and very story-driven. Very well done. Diane Wiest plays the mother of Corey Haim. It's just got a great cast. It's very witty, has a lot of flavor. It's set in the murder capital of the world, although I don't remember which town or city this was set in. But a lot of fun and an audience picture. Definitely an audience picture with the great line, "Death by stereo." Light of Day is Paul Schrader's take on rock and rollers trying to make a living and all the competition with other rock and roll bands. And it's got Michael J. Fox in a role that he tries his best, but he doesn't completely succeed as a rock and roller. Joan Jett plays his sister, who does much better. Jason Miller is also in the film. Gina Rowlands, they play the parents of both of them. Michael J. Fox and Joan Jett play siblings in the same rock band. Pretty good film. You know, I enjoyed it. I think the original title was Just Around the Corner to the Light of Day, which I believe is a Bruce Springsteen song. So but they performed it well, and I enjoyed it. But Michael J. Fox was miscast, even though he's still not bad in the role. He did give it a good. He gave it a good try. But anyway, Lethal Weapon, Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, the original Lethal Weapon. I've always liked it. I think it's probably my favorite Lethal Weapon movie out of the whole series, although Part 2 is probably just as equally as good. It is what it is. It's one of the best buddy cop movies, but it's got two formidable talents, Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. I mean, you can't really beat those two for that type of movie. They were the best. Gary Busey is also in it. Tom Atkins. It's just a good picture. And Darlene Love plays Danny Glover's wife. It does a good job of depicting his family, or the way they are, I should say. And just fun movie. Good picture, a lot of good action, but you care about the characters, so they are given enough time to develop. Mel Gibson playing a ticking time bomb, which of course he does very well. All right, moving along to The Last Emperor. I saw this in New York City in a 70mm screen, and I'm glad I did. Directed by Bernardo Bertolucci, and many scenes of it were actually shot in the actual Forbidden City. It's a spectacular movie. I don't remember specific details, but most of it was just marvelous to look at. It was just incredible cinematography. And won Best Picture of the Year, I believe, was The Last Emperor. And I should see it again someday. One of the last truly great epics that we ever had in cinema history, I think, was The Last Emperor. Yes, great film. Until Hamlet, anyway, by Kenneth Branagh in 1996. This was really, this was a true epic in the truest form. And a lot of people walked out before the end of the movie. I'm not sure why. I don't know if the colors just got to them. Maybe it was too saturated for their taste. I don't know. Anyway, so interesting point there. The Hidden is a film by Jack Shoulder, who directed Nightmare on Elm Street 2. This is about aliens taking over the world. It's sort of actually one alien slug looking for a human host. And it's an exciting movie. Once again, a lot of terrific chase sequences. Very intense. It definitely keeps you on the edge of your seat. And this is also an audience picture for sure. I mean, you see this with an audience, and they will be holding on through their seats. It's really that type of movie. Kyle MacLachlan is also in it. It's a pretty good picture. I like the alien slug who's trying to reach to the top to become the leader of the free world. How interesting. Never quite makes it, though. All right. Good Morning Vietnam, Robin Williams. True story of Adrian Kroner, who was the radio DJ during the days of Vietnam. And this is a good role for Robin Williams. It's well done. Often very funny, but very true to the period. And it's Robin Williams, one of his very best films, for sure. So that's the best that I can say right now about it. I think I've only seen it one other time, so I would like to check it out again. Fatal Attraction. Now, this is a movie that when I first saw it, I thought, this is an intense thriller. And it is intense. But I think in retrospect, there are the first half of the movie is more of a psychological picture, and then it becomes a Friday the 13th clone to a certain extent. And I just never quite cared for the direction they went in. It just seems to betray what the first half of the movie was showing, which was this psychological profile. I mean, of a woman who's seriously disturbed, but then she somehow becomes a psychopath by the end. And, they have Michael Douglas has an affair with her, and things go awry, to say the least. So it was a movie that was meant to make men afraid of having an affair, although I'm sure it would also make women afraid too. You never know what's going to happen, and you have to face the consequences, and he doesn't exactly, he faces consequences, but they're not, they're more of the, they're germane to the thriller genre rather than to film noir. And I think that's part of the problem. So overall, worth seeing, but, there are scenes in there like the cooking of the bunny rabbit that maybe just a little too much. Again, I think it betrays its own convictions. But anyway, all right. That movie was certainly talked about a lot. It was fairly controversial and discussed. It was a water cooler topic, was Fatal Attraction at that time. Broadcast News is my single favorite Holly Hunter film. I love Broadcast News. It's James Bridges at his best. I think, yes, the other film he did was Terms of Endearment, which is also a really great film. I think that this would make a great double feature. Terms of Endearment and Broadcast News. For developing three-dimensional characters, Albert Brooks, Holly Hunter, William Hurt, they are just terrific. You could see it in the poster. They are well developed. You care about them. Each one has a different personality. Holly Hunter is an all-business, no-nonsense type, person. She is trying to run a news station. William Hurt plays the new anchorman who doesn't have a clue about the news that he's talking about. He has no context. He's just telling it as it is, but not necessarily with any real insights. And Albert Brooks is the veteran who deserves a shot and doesn't quite get it. About the news, just about the way that the news is run at a TV station, it is so informative, so insightful, and so comedic, so true, so honest. Everything about it is just fantastic. If this was the first film I ever saw Holly Hunter in, and it makes you a fan of Holly Hunter. And I already liked William Hurt in other movies before this, but and certainly Albert Brooks, but Holly Hunter, she stands on her own 2 feet against these two. She is fantastic. Joan Cusack is also in it, in a small role, and in a cameo, Jack Nicholson, of all people. And the ending, it's because it's sort of a love story too, to some degree, and you wonder who Hunter is going to choose. Is it going to be William Hurt, or is it going to be Albert Brooks? And the ending surprises you. So I won't give it away if you haven't seen it, but let's just say it's ambiguous, and that's what I love about it. Blind Date is Blake Edwards at his zaniest at that time, until he did, what was it called? Skin Deep with John Ritter in 1989. This is Bruce Willis, Kim Basinger. He's dating a woman from hell. The date, everything that can go wrong on this first blind date goes wrong. At first it seems fine, and then he gives her some wine, and the movie becomes madcap to say the least. I mean, it was just a very funny movie. If you like Blake Edwards comedies, particularly when things go wrong and you develop the chaos from one situation to another and it escalates, this is a movie to see. Absolutely. And we ended with Beverly Hills Cop 2. This was Eddie Murphy's retread of his original 1984 hit Beverly Hills Cop. This time it's not Martin Brest directing, it's Tony Scott, Ridley Scott's brother, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. And I liked the movie. When I first saw it, I saw it on opening day. So talk about an audience picture. This was definitely it. This was the very essence of it. But here's the problem with an audience picture. When the audience is laughing at almost every single little moment, in particular any moment with Eddie Murphy in it, it shows what a superstar he was. It proves that for sure. I mean, he was a real superstar, Eddie Murphy, no question about it. It was hard to beat him, particularly for comedy. I mean, no Chevy Chase, no Steve Martin, forget all those guys. Eddie Murphy was the comedy superstar, whether he deserved it or not, depending on your evaluation of Eddie Murphy overall. He was the top of the top. And this was the biggest film of that year. It was Beverly Hills Cop 2. But then you're almost inclined, this is the problem with an audience picture. When people are laughing, then you're almost inclined to believe that you should be laughing too. And at first when I first saw it, I thought, oh, this is a great movie. And I thought, geez, this might be better than the first Beverly Hills Cop. And then, the critic in you, or in me anyway, after a while evaluates the picture and realizes, no, this is definitely not better than the first Beverly Hills Cop. It's not on the same wavelength. It is a retread. It's, look, it's Axel Foley. He's in Detroit. And then there's bad business in Beverly Hills. And he decides to help them out. And he goes out to Beverly Hills and joins the same two cops. They could have done something different. They could have done a movie of Eddie Murphy just in Detroit, and believe me, Axel Foley, they could have called it whatever you want to call it, people would have still gone to see it. I'm not sure people really wanted a retread of the original film, and that's exactly what Cop 2 is. It's just not nearly as good. But still, even for retreads, this is a stylish picture. I mean, you look at it, it's got great style. It makes Los Angeles look like heaven. And yet there's also the noirish shadows of the villains and the alphabet robberies. Some of that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Much of the film is contrived, and I agree with Leonard Maltin because, since when did Axel Foley become friends with these Beverly Hills cops from the first movie who wanted him out of Beverly Hills? He was too much trouble to deal with. Axel Foley returns to Beverly Hills like if he owns Beverly Hills. I mean, there's just none of that satire, however brief, albeit brief, that it was satirical, the first movie, in the new one, in Cop 2. Even less of it, of course, in Cop 3. But overall, I mean, I'm glad that I saw it in theaters at the time. It's got an energy to it, and it probably, in many ways, Beverly Hills Cop 2 is a movie that's very much a reminder, not just of the Jerry Bruckheimer, Don Simpson model of that time, who were producers of real action pictures. And this movie is more of an action picture than a comedy in many ways. It shows the greed of the 1980s. I think it really does get into that. And money is everything, but not to Axel Foley. It kind of gives that flavor to it. It's very much a 1980s movie. So yeah, that's the end of it. So this is the last one, and those are the 1987 films that I saw in theaters. And I hope you enjoyed it. And a couple of weeks we'll look at 1988 and 89. So that will close out the decade. I would have done 1980 and 81, not to mention, I think 80 and 81 I didn't do, only because, quite frankly, I didn't really see too many films in theaters in those two particular years. So we're skipping that. But, we'll return with 1988 in a couple of weeks, and 1989. And that's all I got to say about that. So this is Jerry Saravia at the Movies, signing off.